one of the things we talk about always is, and what we see often is, companies becoming almost a victim of their own growth. So, they're running and gunning, they're trying to grow their business, grow revenues, serve their customers, interact well with their suppliers. And often along the way, as they grow and scale their business, they find that they're just continuing to throw more people at the situation. So the business grows, revenues grows, but their back office headcount is growing almost in lockstep. And so that's where we like to come in and really guide businesses down a path to say, look, there's a different and better way that you can be doing these things that make your business a lot more scalable, that'll allow you to achieve your growth goals without adding those additional expenses and getting to that state of becoming kind of a victim of your own success.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Break Free podcast, where we're shining the light by interviewing business leaders that are really making a difference with what they're doing in the world. Today we have with us one of those exceptional guests, Matt Clark. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Matt, for the audience, can you give me your full name? Where do you live and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, so full name is Matt Clark. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, but spend a lot of time traveling all over the world. And then what I do for work is I'm the president and CEO of a company called Core Centric.
This podcast is brought to you by ISU Corp. Are you having trouble with your software projects? Is there a project that's taking too long or a technology you can't handle? We can help. We are ISU Corp, experts in custom software since 2005. With almost 20 years of experience, we can solve any technical problem from new businesses to satellite software. We've done it all. Let us turn your ideas into reality. Learn more about how we can help by visiting us at www.isucorp.ca. Your solution starts here.
What does your company do?
So essentially, we sit between buyers and suppliers in the B2B space and really try to optimize transaction processes and payment processes for both sides. So really, our whole mission is to remove friction from B2B relationships and B2B transactions, really focused on the areas within our customers' businesses around procurement, accounts payable, and accounts receivable, but kind of bringing that together in a way that is unique and differentiated by really combining great technology with managed and advisory services and unique and differentiated payment capabilities that allow us to be that kind of driving force in removing friction from B2B.
Would you consider, Matt, that your business is a tech company or is more a business model?
Yeah, it would be probably described as a fintech, financial technology company would be the best kind of category to put our business in. That and then I would say tech-enabled services, kind of a combination of those two things.
And then, do you know what the origin was? Like, how did the company came to be? What was the initial idea?
Yeah, so the founding idea for the business was really focused in a specific sector in the truck transportation space. And our founder, saw an opportunity specifically in that sector where there was a ton of friction. Buyers and suppliers were constantly kind of at loggerheads in terms of how they were going to exchange purchase orders, invoices, and ultimately the payment timing and the payment modality around those payments that needed to be made. And so he created a group purchasing organization, but he created a group purchasing organization in a way that was different than what was out there in the marketplace. So this was like the late 90s. And basically when he created this group purchasing organization, said, I don't want it to operate like traditional GPOs operate, where kind of the GPO itself kind of sets up the programs, negotiates pricing with the suppliers, offers those programs to the buyers, but the buyers and suppliers are really left, to themselves to figure out how they're going to transact with each other. He went to the supply side of that equation from day one and said, we're going to create a GPO that's going to have all the characteristics of a traditional GPO, but we're going to really streamline and digitize and automate how transactions are processed. And so told the suppliers they would be getting paid on time, every time by us. And that we would swivel chair and figure out how we needed to collect from the buyers and ultimately how those transactions needed to be exchanged. So that really kind of put us squarely in the middle of B2B. And from being squarely in the middle of B2B, and that is initially in that truck transportation sector, we saw additional opportunities to keep evolving our capabilities to say, all right, we've solved this kind of private commerce network, but within these individual businesses, these large, truck manufacturers, these companies that own and operated fleets, we were seeing that they needed help above and beyond what they were doing with our GPO. And so through our organic evolution and through acquisitions, we continued to build out, kind of a full end-to-end set of capabilities that addressed really both sides, the needs and the challenges that existed on both sides of a B2B transaction.
Isn't it interesting that having the B2B strategy can really speed things up once you have a solution that you can deploy towards other businesses that are maybe even struggling, right?
That's right. Yeah, and I think one of the things we talk about always is, and what we see often is, companies becoming almost a victim of their own growth. So, they're running and gunning. They're trying to grow their business, grow revenues, serve their customers, interact well with their suppliers. And often along the way, as they grow and scale their business, they find that they're just continuing to throw more people at the situation. So the business grows, revenues grows, but their back office headcount is growing almost in lockstep. And so that's where we like to come in and really guide businesses down a path to say, look, there's a different and better way that you can be doing these things that make your business a lot more scalable, that'll allow you to achieve your growth goals without adding those additional expenses and getting to that state of becoming kind of a victim of your own success. So that often is the driver of when we start working with businesses.
That's wonderful, Matt. And how have you been involved in the business?
So just north of about 20 years. So the company's been in existence about 25 years. I've been involved for about 20 plus years of that 25-year journey.
That is amazing. So what was your first role?
Oh man, I did a little bit of everything. So, typical kind of, entrepreneurial type story where when I came on board, the vision that I was originally attached to was very much almost like a startup within a larger business. So we had the GPO business that I talked about that, started to get scale. And then there was a technology acquisition made, about 20 plus years ago. And that's when I came on board. I was working at a different startup, technology startup in the DC area. The acquisition was done here in the DC area. And so taking some of the skill sets that I had started to develop in my current role and applying them to this new opportunity. So everything from selling to project managing, to product managing, to running operations, I've pretty much touched along the way every piece of the business as I've kind of moved up the chain here.
Until you became the top leader. That, it's a beautiful story. And it's very hard, to find. I probably have interviewed one or two persons that have gone through where you have gone. Because a lot of the times to advance your career, you have to jump to another job. Like when I was in the corporate world, I was in corporate for 10 years. And every time I wanted to move up the corporate ladder, I would jump to another company because they will hire me out with a better position, better pay. But it was for me anyways, was hard to grow in the same business. Or maybe I was, every 2 years I was jumping to another company. Maybe I was too anxious to grow too fast.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that becomes almost, the growing up in the business, becomes, I think, a big blessing, but also has little elements of a curse to it because, again, I have so much institutional knowledge, so much subject matter expertise that now that I'm in the CEO seat, it becomes difficult not to allow myself to get pulled into, the weeds, get pulled into the details because there's so many things that I have historical knowledge of or pattern recognition against. That you want to jump in and you want to help, but you also don't want to, be getting too far into the weeds and not being able to spend the requisite amount of time on vision and strategy and the things that as a CEO really needs to be focused on.
Yeah, Matt, I'm in the same boat. My main company is a technology consulting business. We create custom applications for our clients using AI. But the company has been automated since 2021, meaning I no longer have to be there on the day to day. As you know, as a CEO, I should be just inspiring people and making sure overall the company works. But because I founded the company and it's almost 20 years old, every time something happens, I have the temptation to go back and fix it.
Yep.
The president's always, please don't get involved. Please don't get involved. You know. So where did this boat?
Very, very, very familiar with what you're talking about there.
My frustration is that, I see the problem. I'm like, I can fix that in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Why is it taking so long, right?
Exactly.
If I do that, then the people don't learn, right?
Exactly. Yep. Then it becomes that whenever there's an issue, they're always coming to you, to come up with that quick answer. And I think sometimes it's good to, give it some breathing room and allow folks to kind of find the right answer themselves. And then after the fact, you can kind of say, next time you could do it quicker this way, or next time, you did a really good job, but next time you tweak this or tweak that, and it would be even better.
Yeah, no, and I'm trying, and the last thing that happens is that we have to shrink a little in February after, some months of we're project-based. So if we don't replace the work fast enough, we have to shrink the team on. So we're always shrinking and expanding, right? And so we had to do it in February, and I got involved too much and I messed things up. So that was the last temptation. Same thing with clients and contracts, right? If the client is big enough, I have the temptation to go and negotiate myself when I already have a bunch of people that do that, right?
Yeah.
But I think I'm getting better month by month. So
we're always learning, right? We're always learning and evolving.
Yeah. For us, we run with, I don't know if you're familiar with EOS.
Yes. Yeah.
So we run on EOS. So my job is only to actually participate on those quarterly meetings and make sure the routes are set, and everything else should be done by everybody else. So that's my goal. In fact, today I'm going to tell my executive team I will no longer participate on weekly meetings.
Oh, wow.
So I don't have that temptation, you see.
Yeah.
Clark, in the past, what do you think was the catalyst for you to get into the CEO role? Like, did you have that vision? Do you really wanted to become the top leader of that business, or how did that evolve?
Yeah, I think it goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about before of, getting involved in so many different aspects of the business and thinking, making that switch from thinking kind of very bottoms up, when you have a specific role with specific responsibilities, you tend to very, myopically focus on that. I think what was different for me is I was always kind of looking across the business and coming up with thoughts or ideas about how we could, do things different or better. And then I'd say the biggest kind of, driver of, I think, ending up where I ended up in the company is, we had signed our largest customer ever in 2012. And really it was my responsibility to make sure everything, I was very involved in the sales process, but then making sure everything went right from an execution perspective. And there was a lot of complications. It was a very complicated engagement, very large, was going to be kind of make or break for our company at that time. And taking a big project on like that and running it, kind of cradle to grave, all aspects, working with, our internal folks, working with our client, working with the constituents that we were going to be touching through this relationship with our client. I think demonstrated the ability to really execute at a high level. And I think that's when, my profile probably rose when we executed that, pretty flawlessly and had a very successful, implementation launch. And, fast forward 13 years later, still our largest customer and something that's our, probably our biggest, success story from a customer impact perspective.
That's wonderful. Once you have a client that long, you realize that your company has roots, right? We have a company also, one of our best clients is been 11 years with us. Mm-hmm. I remember we're a custom software shop, right? So they always, they have us on a retainer. We're always improving, creating more and more for them. As the software evolves, their profits grow. And so it's a win-win solution, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What was the first thing you had to correct as the CEO that you saw that you could actually make an impact?
Yeah, I'd say it was really kind of from an organizational structure perspective. So certainly in our early days, we were very much, an entrepreneurial culture, very kind of bootstrapped. We didn't take outside money until we were north of 100 million in revenue, until we were kind of 20 years into our journey as a company. But then, when I became CEO, I kind of saw that we had, if you've got entrepreneurial culture on one end of the spectrum and you've got, bureaucratic culture on the other end of the spectrum, we had gone too far towards that bureaucratic culture, too many spans and layers, too many specialized roles. And so that was one of the first things I wanted to do was, you're not going, as you grow and scale, you're a global company, you're not going to get all the way back to that entrepreneurial culture. And you really shouldn't, because there's certain elements you need to have of process and structure, but you got to always be cognizant of, are we going too far in that direction of bureaucracy and process and structure, that it's hindering our ability to be quick and nimble, especially in this day and age, with what we're trying to do as a business. So that was really, one of my main objectives when I first came into the CEO role, was to really drive towards that right culture, because, culture, eats strategy for breakfast, as Jim Collins would say, all day long and twice on Sunday. So, making sure that culture is strong, that we have the right people in the right seats in the bus with the right expectations and the right accountability structures, was really kind of a big area of focus for me.
It's hard, not because the company evolves, especially when it starts growing that, to that level, and having that balance is very hard.
Yes.
And if you make it if the bureaucracy goes too much, you have an elephant that is very hard to move, and that runs the risk of extinction. But if you stay entrepreneurial, you also run the risk of extinction when you realize that you don't have enough structure, and your clients will demand that from you.
Exactly. Yep. There's that delicate balance that we're trying to strike, that right balance on every single day, and every conversation really that we're having, making sure we're in that right zone, that right balance.
That's amazing. Do you have to get external help to achieve that?
Not so much. I mean, I think it was really just asking ourselves, the tough questions, taking a look at, how things had evolved in certain areas, and really understanding, where we were performing well, maybe where we weren't. And I think you get some expertise, some outside help on very specific topics. Could be, some consulting or advisory around go-to-market strategies or sales strategies, on the R&D front. Just kind of getting some input on, benchmarks and best practices when it comes to, software development lifecycle processes and structures. But taking those kind of outside in perspectives and really, shaping them the right way for our business. We are a unique business in the way in which we deliver our solutions, as I mentioned before. So we've got elements of like a pure SaaS software company, but then you've got real true advisory resources. We've got, just different elements of our solutions that in and of themselves could probably be, mini businesses. So, we found historically that the kind of cookie cutter approach, or maybe one size fits all approach that maybe, outside in perspective would generate is helpful to a certain extent, but you always got to customize that to what the reality of your situation is and how it fits within the construct of your business.
For sure. Matt, what has been the biggest problem you had to face as a leader in your entire career, and how did you overcome it?
I would say it would really be always driven by kind of macroeconomic cycles. So we've been fortunate enough to be around long enough to have lived through some interesting macro cycles, whether that be the recession of 08, 09 and managing through that, always challenging. Certainly when COVID kind of shut the world down, essentially overnight, I would say that's been one of the more jarring things, where you're sitting there saying, holy moly, where is this going to go and what's happening, and having no idea if, how long it's going to last, what it's going to look like. Even a couple weeks ahead was certainly a challenge. And then I'd say, more recently, some definite macro challenges around, inflation and interest rates and cost of money and things of those issues. So I'd say I take all those kind of 3 points in time and kind of throw them into a big bucket of where, you're hit with something from the outside in that's really out of your control. We can't control the broader macro economy. We can't control, the impacts of a global pandemic or anything like that. And so you find yourself immediately shifting to, okay, what do we have to do to protect the company? What do we have to do to protect our employees, our relationships with our customers and suppliers? And, what do we have to do to control what we can control, and deliver that message to the team around, hey, there's things outside of our company that we can't control, but what are the things that we can control to make the best out of a situation? And I think what I've been most proud of through all those, macroeconomic cycles is that we've been able to get through those, without doing, large scale layoffs or big rifts, really always focusing on, okay, first and foremost, if we're hitting some tough times, you stop hiring new people, because the last thing you want to do is hire new people and then have to turn around and either get rid of those same new people or get rid of people that you've had because you've overhired or gotten out over your skis from that perspective. And then understanding, okay, what can we do in these times where maybe, activity is not, booming, maybe sales activity isn't booming because people are at an extra cautious, kind of conservative mindset. We've tended to use those times to kind of focus on ourselves and say, okay, we've got an opportunity here, to do things that we would say, we wanted to do, but we kept kicking the can down the road on because we were busy and those sorts of things. So focusing on the things that will prepare you. Ultimately, everything's a cycle, right? So it's going to eventually swing back to the positive, and activity is going to pick up. And we want to make sure we're positioning ourselves to be able to thrive, not just survive, but thrive when things start to pick up. And so that's some of the things that have served us well when we've hit those, those rough kind of macroeconomic cycles.
During COVID, before COVID, do you have everybody working from the office?
Yeah, before COVID, we were probably, I would say about 50% of our employees were in office. We're still today a very kind of heavy sales organization. So you have resources that prior to COVID were typically, remote resources that were either based in a territory or a region for a purpose. But yeah, we had a significant portion of our employee base that was office based, and we had to pivot, pretty quickly to make sure that we could continue to operate in a 100% remote environment.
In my case, I was blessed enough that, when I started business in 2005, one of my hypotheses was that I could actually have a software company where I could let my developers and my BAs choose wherever they wanted to work from, as long as the job got done. So I started that in 2005. All my clients were fighting because they wanted to see the developers. They wanted to see us. And I'm like, no. You want to do business with me? This is the way it runs. And I pushed through. So 90% of my staff was already working from home.
Yep.
By the time COVID hit, but that 10% still was very hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a good thing for your situation and for our situations, whether it was 50% remote for us when it hit or 90 for you. You already, I'm assuming, had the right tools and things in place. We just had to apply them on a much larger scale. But having that experience of managing people in a remote environment, having the tools and the technology to support that, allowed us to pivot pretty quickly without really any major disruption when things really shut down there.
I'm a man of faith, and I remember in 2008, we had a large contract with one of the biggest ministries in Orlando. These people have presence in more than 150 countries.
Yeah.
We have this contract to expand their presence online. And, it took months to negotiate and this and that. And then the 2008 crisis hit, and I got a call from the CIO, and he said, I'm sorry, I cannot honor the contract. They signed it 2 weeks before. It was signed. I was just waiting for the down payment.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are we going to do, right? And number one, what I realized is that my mom used to say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And if you look at the Bible in Romans 8:28, it says that everything comes together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose, which is basically the same thing as my mom used to say.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out, okay, God, what do you want me to learn from this? And my contract negotiations were so big, and we had so much stuff to protect ourselves from what happened.
Right.
So I said, if a crisis happens, I cannot, I would have sued them, but why would I be what would I gain with that?
Yeah.
90% of their funding was evaporated in 1 hour.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what I want to do? I'm going to just streamline my contracting process. So from 30 pages, we went down to 5 pages. And that made us leaner, smoother, faster. Our clients loved it. Yeah. We never had a problem legal. Since then, we still operate under that new contract. And so it made us better at the end.
There you go. Yeah.
Right?
I'm a big believer in that. I always tell people, you don't really get to demonstrate your ability as a leader. You do, but it's muted in good times because, right, if things are going well and everything's great, what's it really taking, to keep that going? But when you get hit with those hard times, that's when you have a real opportunity to, step up and demonstrate your effectiveness as a leader. And then to your point, often comes from that, innovation or new processes or new thinking that, drives improvements so that when things do get better, now you've got a more streamlined contract process or something that comes through those tough times that, maybe you wouldn't have surfaced if that didn't happen.
Yeah, it's the same for COVID, right? So I lost 50% of my contracts in one day, right? All my manufacturing clients were like, sorry, we're shut down. How can we run this project still? So I grabbed all my leaders and I told them, okay, we have enough cash to survive this for at least 6 months. I'm not going to let people go because we're not shrinking because we don't have business. We're shrinking because there is a pandemic. So what do we do with our time to help us get more contracts after this is ending? So we would always had an eye on AI, always AI was inspired in the 60s.
Right.
And I knew about AI since we're doing data warehousing and business intelligence in the 2000s, right? So I told the team, okay, let's do something that we don't have to start from scratch that involves AI. So we created something called the Core, which is a system that now we use to, it makes us cheaper than people from India, for example.
Yeah.
Because it has AI embedded, it has all the building blocks for any new platform. So when my clients come in, they don't have to start from scratch. And at the same time, it's great for digital transformation because they can use that as the basis for all the other systems in their company.
Yeah.
So we build it. We start, in the same year, we grabbed a client. They were importing rubber from China to the US. And remember how the containers got from $5,000 all the way up to $25,000 like that?
Yep.
So we use the Core to create an AI program for them to predict how much material they were going to use to maximize the containers. And we saved them hundreds of thousands of dollars using that system. So that, after 6 months, we recover our clients and we actually got a whole bunch of new clients. So we actually experienced growth during the pandemic.
There you go. Yeah, that's a very similar story for us is, after everybody got over the initial kind of shock, some of these people that we have been talking about in terms of, trying to push them to do digital transformation and automate and digitize everything they're doing around their B2B processes. I always say when the macro conditions are great, companies aren't looking to rock the boat, right? They're like, if it's not broken, let's not fix it. But then when tough times come, the smart companies say, okay, we really need to move forward with these strategic initiatives because that's the only way we're going to get through these tough times, that it's the only way we're going to be positioned to thrive coming out of those times. So I says, we've had some of our best sales years in that 08, 09 recession period, in that COVID period, when people, kind of got shaken and they got that wake up call of not having digitized and automated processes is not going to be the way of the future here. And it really forced folks to take action that maybe they were kind of kicking the can down the road on previously.
Because of the crisis in 2008, I realized that in a bull market, everybody looks like a hero and an expert, right? Until the bear market comes in.
Yeah.
So now when we're in a bull market, we make sure we maximize our profits.
Yeah.
And we create the reserve fund for the bear market, and we don't touch that money. Imagine we don't have that fund for during COVID. It would have killed us. And that came from the 2008 crisis, by the way.
Yeah, I always tell people in town hall, I tell our employees in town halls, when we're in tough times like that, I said, the good news is, you work for a company that has seen this before, something like this before, knows what to do. Two, you work for a company that's built to last, right? We don't cut corners and we, do the right thing as part of our, core principles and core values. And so when you do that, you have that wherewithal, that ability to manage through those tough situations. And then when you look externally, it's been something that's been very, something I'm very proud of is, again, when those times are tough and you're figuring out ways how to help your customers, whether that's giving them, a little leeway on certain things, whether it be payment terms or timing or whatever, yes, there's some short-term pain that you experience from that, but guess what? Those relationships get fortified for decades when you are there in a tough time for your customers, and you're really truly trying to partner with them to help them get through those tough times, and then that develops a tremendous amount of loyalty over the future long periods of time.
For sure. Matt, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to steal too much out of it. I know you're a super big executive. Thank you for your wisdom, your time. I'll ask you one last question before we finish the podcast. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write on it?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a great question. I think I would probably, it sounds really simple, but I think it's something that, doesn't always make itself into our business or personal worlds, which is just put one of our core values up there, which is do the right thing. It's a thing that I feel like as individuals, as teams, as companies, as families, if you just have that as your kind of guiding principle, and like I said, it sounds very simple, but it often isn't. Doing the right thing is often not the easiest thing. But doing the right thing, if you use that as your filtering mechanism for how you make decisions, for the actions that you take, I think, as individuals, as business leaders, as just, citizens of this world, you'll get to the right place in due time.
Man, thank you so much. It's actually true. It's easy to say, but it's hard to, especially when you have conflicts of interest. Especially you are tempted to make a lot of money, but you have to bend this rule over. Don't do it. Because it just comes back and bites you.
I always tell our people, the culture of a company is defined by the worst behavior you're willing to accept. And that ties right to kind of doing the right thing and not cutting corners and making the hard decision, even if it's not the easy one.
And Matt, I think that's why your company is so successful, because for the most part, I know that you have respected that. Same with us, right? Yeah, sometimes we make mistakes, stupid mistakes, but when you learn from your mistakes, that culture grows, right? Yeah. That transparency, that honesty, say, okay, we messed up here, sorry, let's move on, right? Let's pick up the pieces and pay for our mistakes and move on and make it better next time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that we make mistakes, which requires removing your pride.
Absolutely. Yep.
Which is sometimes the hardest thing to do.
Absolutely.
Matt, thank you so much for your time again. If people like to follow you, are you on LinkedIn?
Yes, on LinkedIn. So you can look me up. There'll be several Matt Clarks out there, but not only one Matt Clark that's CEO of Core Centric. So not hard to find on LinkedIn.
Matt, thank you so much. God bless you and have a beautiful rest of the week.
Great. Thank you, David.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.